Hey, Neil here from PerfectSunLED.com and the now working again GrowPotCheapy.com, where you can find my free grow course and a bunch of other goodies. All right, so in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to use General Hydroponics pH indicator to kind of give a ballpark where your pH is. And actually, if you absolutely just cannot afford a pH pen, I don't recommend buying one of those cheap ass $13 ones. Like, they don't last very long and they rarely ever read good at all, if ever. And like, if you do use one of those, calibrate it every single time before you use it. So every day, basically. Okay, so now you can kind of use this to grow with. I'm going to kind of talk about how to do that, but you can also use this to kind of make sure your pin isn't getting too whacked out. But it's not so beneficial for that, and I'll explain why. So the first thing you do, this is the drops here, General Hydroponic pH indicator. You can buy this on Amazon for a kit. Comes with this little vial and the drops for like, I think it was 13 bucks, 12 bucks, 10 bucks, something like that. Now it says 3 to 5 drops per test. I usually just do the 3 drops. It's usually more than enough. Sometimes even 2 is enough if you only fill the vial up halfway. So right now I have the vial filled up with the water that I've been watering with right now, right? So I know what its pH is because I have a brand new Blue Labs pH pen and I pH'd it to 5.8. I'm going to show you what 5.8 looks like with the drops. 3 drops in there, put the lid on, kind of had trouble because I'm using one hand, and then shake it up a little bit, and here you go. So it kind of looks, and this is pretty close to what it would look like in real life. It kind of almost looks like PP yellow, kind of like a PP yellow. Now, I remember in another video I said avoid the PP yellow, but in this case, these drops, this is what you want. You actually want the PP yellow. So yeah, anyway, but not the other way around. Now, the other way is when it starts getting orange. This is kind of like a greenish yellow. If you look really carefully, see it's going more toward the green. So it's going toward this kind of greenish yellow. Now, it says here that this yellow color, this nice bright yellow color, that's supposed to be 6.0. And you can kind of see that's kind of what this is. This is kind of like that nice yellow. You see, there's really no indication there of green at all. Right? It's more like yellow. I think I just said green in there, but no, I misspoke, sorry. It's not going toward orange is what I meant to say. Like, it's going more toward the green side of the spectrum. You can tell it's not going toward that orange. See that? So if it starts getting this orange color, this like unhealthy PP orange, right? That's not what you want. Now, like I said, this is what it looks like. This is what the color should look like. This is 5.8. This is what you want. Now, the difficult thing here is it's going to be really difficult to know whether you're at 6.0 or whether you're at 5.5, right? But you can get in the ballpark. Just make sure it looks yellow, like nice light yellow, or it starts to tend toward even if it starts to tend toward this kind of yellowish green, that'll be fine. Like, if it starts looking green, that's no good. But if it kind of starts looking not yellow and starts looking a little bit like almost, it'll kind of start almost looking like not a color at all, sort of. And then it'll start kind of looking more like this. It's kind of to start tending toward green. This is the color you want, but if it starts going like that, that's fine. That means you're still in the ballpark. Like, you're still going to be fine. You're going to be more towards like 6.0 or 6.2, and my nutrients will handle that no problem. They're designed to be able to handle higher pH levels and still be absorbable, and everything should still function just fine. This is not recommended to try to grow with this. So mainly what I would use this for is just to make sure my pH pen is kind of still reading in the ballpark. Because if my pH pen is telling me 5.8, but I don't get a color kind of like this, I get a color more like this, or I get a color more toward orange, then I know that my pH pen isn't reading right. But like I said, you could use this as a general guideline to try to grow with. Just try to get it to look as yellow as possible. You don't want it to look orange. You don't want it to look toward the green. You want it to look just nice, a nice yellow color. And yeah. And that will be fine. That means you're close to 6.0 as possible, and that will be fine. You can actually grow like that. Now, here is what happens if you add a little bit of pH down. So I added way too much pH down. I wanted to kind of show what it looked like when it goes more towards the orange, but this went a little bit too far down. And this, if you get a color like this, you're going to kill your plants. Here you are killing your plants dead, right? By the way, you want to err toward going toward green. because plants can handle a higher pH much better than they can handle a lower pH. If you start getting down to 5 or 5.1, 5.2, the plants do not like that at all. Even with a good nutrient line that helps absorb the nutrients at a wider range of pH that is very chelated, it still has trouble at those lower acidic levels. So definitely make sure you're erroring toward the green and not toward the orange. If it looks anything like orange or red, then you need to add some pH up to it. Now here's what happens. This is my just tap water, right? It's tap water that's filtered through just a drinking filter, not an RO filter or anything. I don't drink RO water. I drink just regular old filtered water. Our 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 tap water is actually pretty healthy. The reason why I do that is because RO water is very low in pH, and so I like drinking water that's higher in pH. And as you can see here, we're getting something that looks more like green. And so as you can see, our water is something, it's not quite 7, I don't think, but it's like tending toward that. Now, if your nutrient water looks like that, right? So if you make your nutrients and you get that color, you need to add pH down. That's too high, right? It shouldn't look green like that. It should look yellow and maybe yellowish green. Like it should make, like if you look very carefully, you might be able to see, this looks like yellow, but like it's tending toward green. Right, that's would be better, or it just looks like pure yellow is good. Again, if it looks like yellow tending toward orange, you want to avoid that, right? You want it, if anything, yellow toward green. But try to get that as like as yellow as possible. So that's what you want. Now the pain about doing this is that if you don't know about how much pH up or down you should be using, especially if you're using tap water, so it varies throughout the year, then this can be a very time-consuming process because you have to, mix the pH up or down into your water, and then you have to stir it, and then you have to put a little bit in this vial and put a couple drops in it and shake it and look at it very carefully. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm still way off. And you got to keep repeating that process little by little. Now, so I recommend to save yourself time is to learn what needs to be in there. Or use a system where it's already figured out for you, like my system. If you buy my perfect nutrients and you use RO water or distilled water or something, some pure water, then you just add the amount of nutrients you need, and then it's about 1 milliliter of Simply Silica, which you can buy on Amazon. Simply Silica. That's what I use for my pH up. That will give you right where you need to be. That'll put you right about 5.8. And yeah. Now, here's another thing, though, especially if you're using tap water, every single day, if you make a water and you don't use it all. Like I rarely ever use it all because I don't want to make a new batch of water every single day. I like to make bigger batches and I can just use from that batch for the next couple of days. If you do that, what's going to happen is the next day it's going to raise in pH. If you're using tap water, it's going to raise in pH. If you're using RO water, it might still raise in pH because of you put some pH up in there. And so now you're going to be more like at 6, 6.1, and that's fine. Now, if you use tap water, you're probably going to be much higher than that. It's probably going to start looking kind of like greenish, and so then you're going to have to pH down it. But you probably don't know how much pH down to put per gallon of water, right? Like how much do you put? 3 drops, 4 drops, 10 drops, and so you're going to have a hard time with the drops figuring that out. So I don't know. If you absolutely have to go this method, then try to figure out a good write down notes of exactly how many drops you put to get that color right. And then that way next time, to put that amount of drops in it because it's going to be the same every time. Unless you're using tap water, like I said, throughout the year, it does kind of vary, but that will give you a good ballpark and you go, okay, my water must have changed or something. Anyway, good luck. I recommend I'm telling you, it is such a good investment to get a good pH pen. If you just don't want to be bothered with pHing and all that kind of stuff, then I recommend organic growing, but in soil. But the problem with organic growing in soil is it has all its own troubles and problems you have to deal with, I think, that are a lot harder to master and get good at. So, you have to make sure that you have the right amount, that your soil has the right pH. So you're basically making sure that the right microbes are in your soil, you have the right kind of amendments in your soil, you have, maybe some diatomaceous earth, you have a little bit of lime in there to make sure it doesn't, it kind of balances out the pH. It doesn't get too high or too low. Sometimes you might have to put a little bit of acidifier in there. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. It has its own other things you have to do and get good at and learn. I think that my coco system or my hempy bucket system, pure perlite hempy bucket system, basically they're all like the same. I pretty much do exactly the same. But my grow system is so easy to learn, so easy to master. Just as a few variables you have to do. And yeah, you need a good pH pen, but it's a good investment, right? Get like if you don't want to get a Blue Labs combo meter, which is I highly recommend because then you just replace the bulb for like the probe for like $60 or whatever every 2 years. If you take good care of it, maybe even every 3 years. Then if not that, then you can just get their regular pen, which I think is like already like, let me see, hold on a second. Let's look. I'm going to give you some good advice here. I'm going to drop some knowledge bombs. Did that sound arrogant? If so, I did not mean it to sound arrogant. Okay, so like I said, this is the pen that I replace on my monitors. I'm using one of these right here. And I replaced this probe right here, which is $60, and then also it has a TDS meter that pretty much lasts forever. That's built into it. And so here you have their Blue Lab pH pen for $70. Just keep in mind, you'll probably have to replace this like every 2 years. If you take, you might be able to get it to last 3 years if you take super good care of it. Here's the combo meter that I use. You can see the initial investment is kind of high at 256, but it comes with a really, really good TDS pin that I've had for years now. It does, you can't even replace it. It's made to last forever. That's why it's just stuck right on there. There's no replacing it. And mine has, I put it through some ringers too, and it still works really good, very accurate. And it also takes the temperature. And then I have this pin, which you have to replace, like I said, like about every 2 years or so. And so it's a pretty big investment starting up, but then all you have to do is replace this pen. I just find this very accurate and good. Honestly, I've never actually used their regular pen, so I don't know how accurate it is over time, but I'm sure it's good. It's probably this, same or similar technology because it's Blue Lab and I know they're a good company. I recommend personally to buy it directly from them and not from anyone else. So make sure that if this, like for example, is this being sold by Blue Lab? Who's actually selling this? Looks like it is. Visit the Blue Lab store. Yeah, okay. You just want to make sure it's actually Blue Lab you're buying from. Don't buy from anyone else because I had actually bought what I thought was from Blue Lab on Amazon before, and the probe just didn't last very long. And I don't know, so I don't know what happens there. I just don't trust certain because remember anyone can sell on Amazon, and some people are scandalous. So they might even give you a fake pen from China that says like a bootleg one that says Blue Lab on it and stuff. They try to make it look as close as they can, just like with perfume and stuff. There's a lot of fakes out there that they try to look like they're the real thing. Another one that I have used, the ones you want to avoid are these ones. You know, like I actually bought some of these just to see in the very like when I first started like growing and stuff, and then I just throughout the years I just decided to see if they got better, and they're crap, man. They don't read very accurately in the first place, brand spanking new out of the box. And then I compared it with one I know is accurate, and then waited a couple days and tried it again, and already it was reading way off than what it was. And so you pretty much have to calibrate it. You can get it to work for a little while, but you're going to have to calibrate it every single time before you use it. So get used to calibrating. And yeah, anyway, I have used HM digital pens, and the price isn't too bad for a pH pen. So I have used this exact pen here, and it did work. Actually, no, I didn't. I think I used the TDS that looked like this. This is the pen I have actually used. In fact, I have this out in my tent. I don't know if it's still good anymore because it's dried out and it just sat out there. But I was using it as a backup just to make sure my Blue Labs was working good because I was kind of doubtful it was. But this is like more expensive than me just buying a new probe for my Blue Labs. But I did try it and it was pretty accurate. But I've heard this one is good too. So that's another one you could try. Actually, here is one that I used before by Hana Instruments. So it looked very similar to this. It looks like they changed their design a little bit. So it might even gotten better over the years. Don't know, but I for the price, it worked good and it lasted at least a year for me. So, but you got to think about it, right? You buy a Blue Labs for $60, let's say. I can pretty much guarantee you take care of it, it's going to last you 2 years. You buy one of these, let's say, for $32. Say it lasts a year. pH pens are disposable products. They do not last forever. They have a life span on them, and if you get 2 years out of it, that's because you took really good care of it. If you get more than that, you're very lucky. Um, like people that are getting more than 2 years out of their pen are probably that's probably not reading correctly anymore. They just don't know that. But maybe it's only reading high and not low, so it's not such a big deal. So their plants aren't really suffering from it. But I've learned over the years to always double check it. So like every you know year I start checking it, and then after 2 years start checking it. And like I didn't have any issues one time. Like my plants were fine, everything. But I was like, you know what? It's been 2 years. I'm gonna get a new pH pen, and I'm gonna check these side by side. And sure enough, the old one was definitely not holding its calibration as accurately, and was already sitting getting on not as accurate anymore. But it was like just going up a little bit. So I was reading 5.8 on it, but it was actually giving me like 6.1 or something, which is fine because the plant still did fine at that. But anyway, Hannah Instruments is good. They had one, I think it was called like for beer or something like that is the one I had. Then also had a TDS meter by them, which was really good and it lasted a long time. In fact, it probably would still work right now if I knew where it was. I'm not sure if I sold it to someone or gave it away, but I don't think I have it anymore. And I'm trying to see if I can find the other one. So yeah, basically it looks like you're going to be spending $30 on a pen that I know is going to work and last for at least a year. I have used this brand before, by the way, but pretty overpriced, and it didn't last any longer than like a Blue Lab. So, but yeah, that's what I would get if you absolutely just don't want to spend the $60, to get going. You need something to get going, then you can do this. If you absolutely need to get a cheapo pen to get going, like I said, you're gonna have to calibrate it every single day, or every time before you use it, and make sure you get the drops for it that I just showed, and just to make sure it's kind of reading in the right ballpark after. So test it to 5.8 with the pH pen, and then make sure that use the drops and make sure it's kind of in the ballpark there, that it looks yellow. I don't know which one I would buy. It probably doesn't matter. They're probably all the same damn thing. Just different brand names on them, but they're all made by the same manufacturers. I don't know. I'm not sure which one I'd try, honestly. Just pick one. Probably just get this one as the cheapest. If that's all you can afford, then, and like I said, just pH it every time before you use it. And yeah. Oh, by the way, so you're going to need calibration solution. Usually, some of them will only calibrate with one solution. So you might want to look and see. For example, mine calibrates with two solutions, the 7 and the 4. But usually it's either the 7 or the 4 or both. And so you might want to make sure like which one you're going to need. I would just buy the pack of both of them. So calibration solution. Totally didn't spell that right because the keyboard typed weird. This is what I got. I actually got this pack right here. It has the storage solution. It has the 10, the 7, and the 4. That way I can just get an idea if it's like reading. Now it'll read these usually no problem. Even a cheapo pen will read these pretty easily, like accurately, because there's such a big swing in the thing. What I like to do is after I calibrate it, so calibrate it with the 7 and then calibrate the 4, or just figure out how yours is calibrated. Maybe I should do a video on that for those that don't know how to calibrate the pH pen, like the Blue Labs at least. But it's in the instructions that come with the pen. So I just calibrate it like it says. It's usually like I said, one or the other or both, and then you'll hit the calibration button. You'll put it in the stuff, and then let it sit there and let it calibrate it. And then after it's calibrated, take it out, turn it off, turn it back on. Put it in some tap water, see what that reads, and then go back to both of these. I recommend buying both of these, and then put it in 7, make sure it's reading 7 accurately, and then shake it off. Maybe dip it in water and shake it off again, and then put it in the 4 and make sure it's reading the 4 accurately. Now, a trick I like to do is then mix these two together half and half. So take the 7, measure out like, 30 milliliters or whatever. Just use like a syringe or something. And then put it in like a little cup or something, and then do the same thing with this one so that they're equal parts of both. Make it as equal as possible, like really measure that accurately. That should give you right around 5.2 pH. If you're not around there, if it's reading way differently than that, if it's not reading 5.1, 5.2, or 5.3, your pH pen is definitely not reading accurately. Now, sometimes if you calibrate it and then you test that middle water, and I keep that middle water in a container or something, want to save that so you can keep using it, that 5.2. Sometimes it'll still read that accurately, but it's not reading accurately. And I don't know how or why that is, but that's what happened with my old pen. It's like, okay, I calibrated it, then I tested the middle water, I was reading the middle water correctly. But then when I made my water at 5.8 and then got the new pen to test it, it's like, nope, it's not accurate. So yeah, anyway, but that's usually a good indication. And then like use the droppers too, just to make sure that every now and again, just test your water with a dropper just to make sure it's looking pretty yellow, and then you're good to go. If you want a bigger bottle, you can buy these for more money. It works the same. Like this and this work the same. It's not a big deal which one you get. This will save you some money. It's not as big of a bottle, but this will last you a good long time. So I tend to just put it in like a cup or something, and then I just save that for a long time. Just put saran wrap on it or something like that. Sometimes I'll just dip my pen right into the medium, right into the bottle to calibrate it, and then just shake it off good, and then rinse it with a little bit of water, dip it in the water, and then shake it off good before I put it in the other bottle, so I'm not like cross-contaminating. And yes, that works just fine. And it's such a small amount of like moisture that's on the pen from the water that's not really going to change this over time. But if you're really worried about that, then you can put it in a cup, and then just you can keep reusing that same cup to recalibrate later. So just save it because you can at least use it 3 or 4 more times before discarding it. So this stuff lasts a long time. Okay, cool. That's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and have learned something from it. Um, pH is so important. It's one of the number one. I should have started that. I should have probably started with that. I should have opened the video with that, huh? Uh, pH is so important. It's one of the main issues that people have with their plants is a pH issue. Like pretty much almost every time, like with me, that I got the grow system down, and then my wife doesn't have it down yet. But every time there's an issue, because she does most everything now, I know it's pH. Almost every time that's what it is. It's a pH issue. Like, oh, it's probably the probe or whatever. If the probe is brand new and she's having issues, it's like, okay, maybe it's still a pH problem somehow. That's my first go-to. Like, let's make sure it's not a pH issue somehow, because that's almost always what it is. So yeah, pH is so, so important. Don't skimp on this one. Okay, much love to you guys, and leave a thumbs up and comment any questions you might have.